And time now for the press review and to take a look at what's been making headlines across the globe. And for that, I'm joined in the studio by Erin Agonki. Hello, Erin. And you're starting with the coverage of the presidential election and the diminishing appeal of the Republican front.
Yeah, that's right. And the cover page of Le Monde says that calls to block Marine Le Pen have essentially gotten increasingly fragile, with several pieces exploring different angles for why that is. Now, the first piece quotes voters who supported Macron against Le Pen in 2017 and say that this time the government's response to the Yellow Vest movement is what really changed their mind. They describe it as a neoliberal majority with its violence and its blinding and mutilating of protesters. This is, of course, a reference to the repression that saw many protesters lose their eyes or even their limbs because of police tear gas grenades during the Yellow Vest protests. Another piece, Annette, on business leaders suggests that they are actually hesitant as well to express who they're voting for two main reasons. One is because some actually simply support Marine Le Pen's ideas, most notably the idea of reindustrialization, which they see as good for French business, while others are worried that if they voice support for Emmanuel Macron, that might turn some voters away, Mélenchon voters in particular, because Macron is already seen as the president of the rich, and if a bunch of big business leaders come out and support him, it's not going to be a great look. And finally, Annette, an article on the overseas territories of Martinique and Guadeloupe explains that in the first round, many people see themselves as having the choice between the plague and cholera. It was the same thing in 2017. They say last time they tried the plague, this time they'll try cholera, Marine Le Pen. That's because a major reason was the vaccine mandates under the Macron government. Those sparked large protests, even strikes on both islands last year. And it's worth mentioning, Annette, that in Guadeloupe there's a historic mistrust of government handling of health crises because of medical scandals dating back to the 70s.
Interesting. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon's far-left party held an internal vote on who to support with bad news from Emmanuel Macron, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. Le Parisien says that the results of that internal survey show that nearly 38% of the 215,000 participants plan to submit a blank ballot. 29% won't vote at all, and just 33.4%, Annette, said that they will vote for Emmanuel Macron. One of the major criticisms, though, of this internal survey is that it didn't include an option of asking who will vote for Marine Le Pen, so that remains a mystery for Mélenchon's party now.
And speaking of Marine Le Pen, Libération details her political agenda in today's edition.
Yeah, the editorial in Libération, Annette, starts by asking readers to simply close their eyes and imagine it. Marine Le Pen announced president of the French Republic. Over in the Kremlin, they say Vladimir Putin, who's destroyed a significant portion of Ukraine, cracks open a bottle of Russian champagne to celebrate what he's always wanted, the implosion of Europe via one of its most powerful member states, France, which he now has a tight grip on because Marine Le Pen's party still hasn't repaid the debts that it owes to a Russian bank. Also because Marine Le Pen has said she wants NATO to get closer ties to Russia. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is celebrating at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida with bottles of Diet Coke. That's because it'll help, Marine Le Pen's victory will help legitimize his possible re-election campaign in 2024. And finally, in Syria, Bashar al-Assad is also rejoicing because Le Pen has been wanting France to reestablish diplomatic ties with Syria. So this is essentially an image of what Libération says will be Marine Le Pen's foreign policy. The rest of the piece focusing on what it describes as her reactionary conception of international relations, and that it would put France on the side of illiberal dictators worldwide. Does a special section, Annette, on the links between Le Pen and Putin. It says that this is the fruit of decades of deepening ties between the French far right and the Kremlin, starting with her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, visiting Russia in the early 90s under Perestroika. Says that Russia for these far-right parties across Europe, represents a masculine, conservative, white, and Christian Europe, an alternative model to what Russia frames as the open-minded, decadent West under the influence of American imperialism.
And despite this image of Russia and Europe, however, Vladimir Putin is appealing to many parts of Africa.
Yeah, and The Guardian did a piece on that this morning. Facebook struggling to control deliberate disinformation campaigns composed of pro-Russian and anti-Western posts that investigators say are contributing to instability in West Africa. A report by one research group in the piece showed that pro-Russian Facebook pages in Mali coordinated support for anti-democracy protests and for the Russian paramilitary group Wagner. The 5 pages the researchers investigated published nearly 24,000 posts and were followed by some 140,000 accounts. It's pretty significant. Now, they've been promoting Wagner as an alternative to French forces in Mali. They help spur anti-France and pro pro-Russia protests in Burkina Faso. Now, Facebook, Annette, declined to take down these pages because when alerted, they said that even though they're clearly part of a coordinated effort, they don't appear to be a front for unidentified users, which means that they are not inauthentic. This is what the company is really struggling to manage, the kind of murky boundary between inauthentic and authentic coordinated behavior, and at what point do you decide that it's harmful? That's because determining whether or not it's harmful depends on people's political beliefs, it depends on the specific context, and it's hard to kind of define objectively.
Okay, let's end on a rather upbeat note after all that. And of course, today's Easter Monday, and you found a piece on why Easter egg chocolate tastes so much better than the normal run-of-the-mill chocolate.
Yeah, that's right, Annette. This piece from the British outlet Metro says that it doesn't make any sense why these eggs are so much better, but it's undeniable. Why is that? Are we gaslighting ourselves? Is it that there's different ingredients? Is the fact that we only have them once a year when the nicer weather, and so we're in a better mood? There's apparently a scientific reason, Annette, and that's because of their round shape. A 2013 study found that the shape of chocolate can indeed influence the perception of its texture, of its taste, with the round shape said to deliver the most in terms of melting and smoothness. I will say, Annette, that that's a Nestle study, so it probably should be taken with a grain of salt. But a British food journal quoted in the piece also said that consumers find rounder shaped chocolate in general to be creamier than square shaped, according to an expert in molecular gastronomy quoted in the piece. That's because if the shape has a large surface area, you get more rapid release of molecules from the food. Who knew?
Do you think that you and I need to do a taste test after this show?
That's a good idea. I should have brought it on set.
Indeed. Thanks for that. That's Erin Agonki with the Press Review.